Today on the podcast, we want to talk about something that has recently been going viral on Connor's LinkedIn. As you all know, Connor is an absolute LinkedIn celebrity. I think, what is it, like over 60,000 followers,
It's
50,
approaching. It's
60,000
approaching.
followers. It's absurd, to be honest, but we're super happy for all the content he shares. Something he's been talking about lately, which has been a lot of people are talking about, interested in, is how English majors are going to be thriving in the world of generative AI. A lot of people, when OpenAI started being able to, for example, write articles and create all this content, people are like, oh my gosh, all the English majors, their jobs are dead because OpenAI is going to do everything for them. But as we're finding out, a really, really critical part about using AI tools is knowing how to communicate. And this is something that English majors happen to be fantastic at. So Connor, what have you been seeing in this space? You've been getting all the commentary, but fill us in.
Yeah, this has been really cool. So I've been actually saying this since last March. Like when I first saw this, I'm like, this really feels like a tool where if you're a good communicator, you're really going to thrive on this, which is very unusual for people who sort of like study the humanities or in arts or communication or whatever it is. Usually a new software comes out and you sort of like tune out a little bit and you're like, okay, well, I wish I'd done STEM when I was in school or anything like that. But what we're hearing a lot lately, and even hearing it directly from OpenAI, Sam Altman and Logan Kilpatrick, and those guys are all saying this too. But the stuff that I was posting about on LinkedIn has been coming from people who are pretty prominent in like the tech sphere, and what they've been talking about is how important it is to understand natural language. And so I just want to sort of like talk about a couple of things. I'm just like checking out this article. So one was from Bloomberg, and this was from Nobel Prize winning economist Christopher Pissarides. I don't know exactly how to say his name, but I'm just going to like read this. This is a quote from the Bloomberg article. In the long term, managerial, creative, and empathetic skills, including communications, customer service, and healthcare, will likely remain high in demand as they are less replaceable by technology, particularly AI. And again, sort of like a little later in that article, again, the Nobel Prize winning guy here is saying the skills that are needed now to collect the data, collate it, develop it, and use it to develop the next phase of AI, or more to the point, to make AI more applicable for jobs, will make the skills that are needed now obsolete because it will be doing the job, he said. Despite the fact that you see growth, they're all not as numerous as they might be required to have jobs for all those graduates coming out with STEM, because that's not what they want to do, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, point being that this is what he's saying. And also, I'll just sort of like jump over also to the Fortune article where it says the head of AI for IBM, essentially, Matt Candy, announced, what did he say? He said, rather than having us learn to talk the language of technology and programming computers effectively, they're learning to talk our language. And he's talking about like, inform it to train it like human behavior. And these jobs, questioning, creativity skills, innovation are going to be hugely important. Anyway, I say all that to say that it is really, really important for, and maybe the people listening to sort of like already get this, but it's always worth reinforcing. It's so easy to sort of like say like, well, generative AI is huge, but I don't know how to prompt engineering, or generative AI is huge, but I don't know how neural networks work, all that kind of stuff. You don't need to know how the software in your iPhone works either, people. Like, what generative AI does unbelievably well is act like a human. And the best people who are, using it are the ones that can pretend in their mind that it's a human and talk to it like a human. That's what's so fascinating to me. And I just hope that like folks are like paying attention to this and realizing my skills are relevant in this world. But Jaden, I throw all that at you. How does that hit you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something I've started to realize as well. We also had Sam Altman recently talking about this and saying, really like the people that are going to excel in the next wave and who are going to be able to prompt great and use these AI tools great are people that are good at communicating their job across. It's really like if you've perfected the skill or you've done well at being like a manager and communicating with people and instructing people on how to do things in a good way, like all that skill set there. And I think it is a lot of it is a big skill set, because like when you think about working with other people, you definitely know someone that has like worked with you before that's told you to do something or asked you to help, and they did it in a horrible way that doesn't make you like want to do it, And it's like, I think even when we get to the point where you tell ChatGPT, hey, I'm going to give you a $20 tip if you do a better job, and it does a better job, like I think you having a really good skill set to work with other people and prompt in a good way and to frame things well and to organize your thoughts succinctly, like it literally gives you better outputs, which I think is such a fascinating concept. I also don't know if like that will be around forever, or the AI models will get around it and you could like ask it in the most, I don't know, like unprofessional kind way
Mm-hmm,
possible and give you
mm-hmm.
the same response. Like I don't know where we'll get on that, but it's interesting because I think the reason these AI models respond this way is like fundamentally because of how they were trained.
Yeah.
And like, so a lot of people speculate, if you're on like a, for example, like a coding forum and someone's like, please, 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 I really need help, my job depends on this, like I am stuck on this problem, they're gonna have like 10 people respond to them with really high quality responses. If they're just like, hey bros, what's up, trying to do this thing for like this scam cryptocurrency, like what's the solution, and everyone's like, go home, right? Like, or like roasting them. So like, obviously funny examples, but like the ChatGPT was literally trained on those examples that
Yeah.
exist in the real world, and they manifest in higher quality results. So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think so too. That's a great way to describe it, because when people think like, well, why is it like that? That's a good explanation for why. And so, and again, if it's so, one of the things that ChatGPT does better than it does anything else, and I would argue that it does this better than anything else, is imitate human behavior. And so, even back in the spring, I remember, New York Times, when ChatGPT 3.5, maybe it was Turbo, came out, whatever it was. Point being, they were like, hey, listen, we gave all these teachers an example of fourth grade writing, and, an AI fourth grader and a real fourth grader, and nobody can tell it apart. And it just shows that like it acts like this. So then what is the actual issue, right? The actual issue, Jaden, and I talk about this a lot when I do trainings for corporations, because a lot of the trainings, I can't stand out there. Like, sorry if you're a trainer, maybe you're great at it. But here's the thing that I find is missing out there. People are like, here's the use cases, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't get to the heart of like what this thing is. The difficulty and why people aren't using it for absolutely everything. Because essentially generative AI is just taking the user interface off AI and saying, use this for anything. And the brain doesn't handle that well, right? Because the brain needs to know the use case, it needs to know the pattern, all that kind of stuff. But instead, like what you're thinking about here is like, okay, so if it's not going to sort of like, if you're not going to have like specific use cases, how do you deal with it? And the best way to do it is if you can kind of like train your brain to really think of this as a human. And I don't mean that literally in some kind of creepy way. I mean it just like, your brain stops you because your brain sees this and it thinks Google and ChatGPT are the same thing because it automates that thing. And so you do a command response and then you kind of walk away. Whereas if you actually have like a real conversation, the output is absolutely incredible. And so that when they're saying, and when Logan's talking about like the 6 prompting thing, Logan over at OpenAI is talking about like, hey, ChatGPT put out their 6 prompting principles. I'm going to be writing about this next week in a thing that I'll be announcing. But it's not about like putting together IKEA furniture, like step by step by step. It's like if you replace in those prompting principles like ChatGPT with your new intern, it's the same thing as you were talking about. It's like, how do you talk to somebody? How do you give instructions? Give good examples, like say, pull from this document, etc. And that's where I think if people can kind of get their heads around that, that's where the real value starts coming in.
Yeah, 100% I agree. I mean, I like that example of like, if you just gave these instructions to like an intern, would they be able to figure out like what to do? I think that's a great example, because sometimes my ChatGPT requests are slightly incoherent, and I'm just impressed that. I mean, I am impressed that it can like typos and bad grammar. It's like you usually can figure it out, but just probably.
But this is the funny thing about that too, right, Jade? Is that like, it's so funny because people will like give an example. It's like, oh, ChatGPT can't do that. And I'm like, let me ask you something. Let's say you got like the most brilliant intern in the world, and you ask them to do something, and they're like, oh, well, sorry, I'm not sure how to do that. We'd be like, get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, you'd never kick them out. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so what I see people doing who really use ChatGPT well is when ChatGPT doesn't give a good answer, you say, like, hey, just answer that again. Or Ethan Mollick has a great one, which is he's like, anytime ChatGPT like says like, oh, I don't really know how to do that, Ethan Mollick is like, yes, you do. You're amazing at it. You're so good at this. And it's like, yeah. And I'm talking about like like recognition of like JPEGs in PDFs, like weird things. But he's like, no, man, you're so good. Oh, you got to believe in yourself. It's like, yeah, I am good. But that's what I mean. Like, if you can kind of get your head around that, get your head around sort of the fact that you have to, you actually do have to train your brain to sort of talk about this like a human. It's very easy in principle, but try talking to a baby like a college professor all day, right? It works for a few minutes. And then you're going to go back to baby language because your brain, with its automated neural pathways, it's like, that's not what this thing is, dude, go back, you know? And that's the really fascinating thing. So to me, it's just all about behavior. And that's why I love this notion that people who understand communication, who understand how to talk, who understand how to persuade are going to be outstanding at this. I love it.
That's, yeah, a great point. And for some reason that made me think it's going to be fascinating to see like how we have to like learn to evolve our talking to ChatGPT as it gets better and better. But then I'm like, yeah, it's probably not that hard for us because like, I mean, you have kids, I have kids. It's like I evolve how I talk from,
Yeah.
my 2-year
Yeah.
old to now my 4-year old to, it's the evolution anyways. As it gets smarter, you just kind of slowly go with it and figure it out. But super exciting stuff. I think major opportunities for English majors, major opportunities for managers, communicators in the AI space right now. So really excited. We'll make sure to keep you up to date on everything happening in the space. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, make sure to leave us a review if you're on Apple or Spotify. Seriously, right now, drop down, find those stars, rate it whatever you think, and I hope it's 5-star, but I mean, we're open to feedback, so whatever. But yeah, give us a review. We really do appreciate it, and we hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.